Every company that's ever needed money has only two real choices: borrow it or sell a piece of itself. Borrow it and you keep full ownership, but you owe every rupee back, with interest, no matter what. Sell a piece and you owe nothing back, but you give up control of that piece forever. By the end of this episode, you'll know exactly how both roads actually work in practice: loans, bonds, dilution, and why some companies choose one over the other. Let's begin with a quick reminder of where we landed last time. There are two fundamental ways to raise money. Debt: you borrow a sum and promise to pay it back, with interest, while keeping every bit of your ownership. And equity: you sell a slice of ownership. There's nothing to repay, but that slice is gone for good. One more way to feel the difference: debt is a temporary relationship. Once the loan is repaid, it's over, while equity is permanent, because the new owners stay owners. With that fresh in mind, let's now open up each side and look at the actual tools and instruments companies use in the real world. We'll start with debt. On the debt side, there are two main ways to borrow, and the difference between them is simply who you borrow from. The first is a loan, and this is the one everyone knows. You borrow from one big lender, usually a bank, in a private arrangement between the two of you. The second is a bond, and it's cleverer. Instead of borrowing from one lender, the company splits its total borrowing into many small pieces and borrows from the crowd, from thousands of separate investors at once. Each of those pieces is a bond, a tradable promise that says, "Lend me money now, I'll pay you regular interest along the way, and I'll return your full amount at the end." So a loan and a bond are the same fundamental idea. Borrowing money you must repay, but a bond unlocks something powerful. It lets a large company borrow enormous sums from thousands of people simultaneously, rather than leaning on a single bank. Let's nail down the mechanics of debt, because the words come up constantly in investing. The amount you borrow is called the principal. The extra you pay on top for the privilege of borrowing is the interest. From the lender's side, that interest is their reward for lending. From the company's side, it's the cost of borrowing. Repayment follows a fixed schedule that's agreed up front. With a typical bond, the company pays interest at regular intervals, say every 6 months, and then returns the full principal at the end, on a date called maturity. And here's the single most important feature of all debt, the thing that defines it: the lender never becomes an owner. No matter how much they lend, they get no slice of the company and no say in how it's run. They are simply owed money, and once they're paid back, the relationship ends completely. There's one more distinction in debt worth understanding, because it explains why some borrowing is cheaper than others. Debt can be secured or unsecured. Secured debt is backed by an asset, something valuable called collateral, that the lender can seize and sell if the company fails to repay. A home loan is the classic example. The house itself is the collateral. Because the lender has that safety net, secured debt is lower risk for them, and so they charge a lower interest rate. Unsecured debt, by contrast, is backed only by the company's promise to pay. No specific asset is pledged behind it. With no safety net, the lender is taking on more risk, and so they demand a higher interest rate in return. You can see the same iron rule we keep meeting. More risk always comes with the demand for more reward. Risk and reward travel together, even in the world of lending. Now let's cross over to the equity side and look at it just as closely. When a company raises money through equity, it issues shares, those slices of ownership we've been building toward all series. Investors hand over their money, and, in exchange, they don't get an IOU. They get a piece of the company itself. They become genuine part owners, and the contrast with debt is sharp. There's no repayment and no interest at all. So how do equity investors make money? Their reward comes entirely from the company doing well, a share of its future profits, and the rising value of their slice as the company grows. But there's a catch built into this, and it's a big one. Unlike a lender who eventually goes away, these new owners are here to stay. And that permanence has a consequence that every founder has to weigh very carefully. It's called dilution. So what is dilution? It's beautifully simple once you see it. Every time a company creates and sells new shares to raise money, the slices held by the existing owners get smaller. Picture it as a pie. If you started out owning 100% of the company, the whole pie, and then you sell a piece to an investor, you might now own only 80%. Your slice has shrunk. That shrinking of your ownership stake is what's called dilution, and it sounds alarming. But here's the crucial trade that makes equity worth it. The money you raised lets the company grow much bigger, and a smaller slice of a much bigger pie can easily be worth far more than the entire slice of a tiny one. 80% of a giant company beats 100% of a struggling one every single time. That's the bet a founder makes when they accept dilution. Given dilution, you might wonder why any founder would ever choose equity over a simple loan. There are 3 strong reasons. First, equity money never has to be repaid, so it can never crush the company with repayments in a bad year, the way debt can. For a young, uncertain business, that safety is priceless. Second, equity investors often bring far more than just money. They bring expertise, valuable contacts, and credibility that opens doors. And third, because those investors only make money if the company grows, their interests are naturally aligned with the founders. Everyone is rowing in the same direction. So there's a natural pattern here. Debt tends to suit steady, predictable businesses with reliable cash flow to make those fixed repayments. Equity tends to suit risky, fast-growing companies, the kind that can't yet promise steady repayments, but that might one day be enormous. The right choice depends entirely on the company. The instruments wear slightly different names in each country, but they're the same tools. To borrow from a bank, both India and the US use straightforward bank loans, often called term loans. To borrow from the crowd, India most commonly uses debentures and NCDs, that stands for non-convertible debentures, while in the United States, the same role is played by corporate bonds. They're essentially the same instrument, a tradable IOU that pays interest. Even governments borrow this way, in India through GSECs, government securities, and in the US through treasuries, which are government bonds, widely considered among the safest investments in the world. But look at the bottom row, because it's the whole point. In both countries, every one of these is the same core idea, an IOU that pays interest and returns your money. Learn the concept once, and the names in any country fall into place. Let's pull both roads together. 1. Debt is borrowing that you repay with interest, and its defining feature is that the lender never becomes an owner. 2. A loan is borrowing from one lender, usually a bank, while a bond splits that borrowing into many small tradable IOUs sold to the crowd. 3. Debt can be secured, backed by an asset, which means lower risk and lower interest, or unsecured, backed only by a promise, which means higher risk and higher interest. 4. Equity is selling shares. There's no repayment, but the new owners are permanent, and issuing shares dilutes the existing owners' slices. And 5. Debt tends to suit steady, predictable businesses, while equity suits risky, fast-growing ones. but both are simply tools for the same job, getting a company the money it needs to grow. We've now mentioned shares again and again, slices of ownership sold to raise money that dilute the founders. But we've never stopped to define a share properly, all on its own. And since the share is the single most important object in the entire stock market, it deserves a whole episode of its own. So next time, we answer the question this whole channel is built around: what exactly is a share? This is the market's story, from the basics all the way to advanced, one story at a time. If loans, bonds, shares, and dilution all clicked into place for you, please hit that subscribe button. It's completely free, and it's the single biggest way you help this channel grow and reach more people just starting out. Drop a like so others can find it, and tap the bell so the next episode comes straight to you. See you there.